Don't ever contempt these two brothers just because they don't look good. They are real Jaeger pilots. The assistant first helps them tighten the screws, then connects the neural sensors to their back. Only after the pilot puts on the helmet does the combat suit seem to really take effect. However, this is only the first preparation step before fighting Kaiju monsters. To control the Jaeger, they still need to go to the actual steering wheel. Only two pilots were seen placing their feet on the control pedals and holding the touch joystick tightly. Until all safety operations are completed, two people are allowed to enter Jaeger driving mode. With the pilot quickly lowering the gun, everyone could truly witness the giant Jaeger. Pilot-facing pilot program connection steps are carried out. When the door slowly opened, everyone discovered that the Jaeger Gypsy Danger in front of them was so big. Just moving it would require 8 tracked armored vehicles. The level 10 storm that humans fear is no different from a drizzle, but for this giant toy to move, it needs the support of a system called the System. Neuron Nerve Jaeger. The two pilots, through perfect mental connection, performed basic control of this giant. Once two people have successfully and perfectly connected with Jaeger, the movements they perform will also be reflected on the screen. Giant Jaeger, even though in front of you is a deep ocean trench, Gypsy Danger still moves as easily as walking on ice. The brothers' mission today is to protect humanity's last line of defense. Even though there are 2 million people in the city who need their protection, the brothers want to save a nearby fishing boat first. They did not know that their stubbornness would cause one of them to die. However, at this time, the fishing boat was completely unaware of the impending danger. They could only vaguely see a giant monster gradually approaching. It wasn't until the monster completely emerged from the water that people clearly saw it was a one-horned kaiju. At this moment, the small fishing boat in front of him was like a stinky ant. However, just when everyone was still surprised, something unexpected happened. Gypsy Danger suddenly appeared, as if a god was trying to descend from the sky. Soon, it was the fastest fishing boat out of the water. I thought I could easily save the people on the ship, but I didn't expect that the monster in front of me would suddenly attack. The two brothers were helpless and had to release the fishing boat back into the water and then put all their strength into preparing for battle. Even though Gypsy Danger launched a series of perfect punches, it did not harm the thick-skinned monster, but instead made it more ferocious. Luckily, Jaeger, this giant, is equipped with the most advanced technology of humanity. In just a moment, the right arm turned into a plasma cannon, hitting it with a high-energy shot. The monster completely disappeared under the sea.
They thought they could easily deal with the monster, but who knew that the next line in the control room would detect its vital signs? But the sea was calm, and there was no sign of any monster. Gypsy Danger immediately fell into an extremely dangerous passive position. Just as the two brothers were thinking about how to deal with the monster that suddenly appeared in front of them, although Gypsy Danger relied on his weight to block the surprise attack, who would have thought that the monster had clearly understood their attack path? Only to see it quickly block the plasma cannon about to be fired, then quickly approach and completely destroy one of Gypsy Danger's arms. Because the Nazon nervous system was synchronized, the pilot immediately felt pain as if being torn apart. But the monster did not stop, but instead became even crazier. Then it even used its sharp claws to pierce the steering wheel and brutally pulled his brother out. Losing the nerve sharing from his brother, Raleigh immediately felt the full burden from Jaeger. The strong electric current caused his whole body to convulse, but even so, he still moved the control panel to his right hand, because that was all. Only then could he muster all his last strength to destroy the monster before him. Even though in the end I'm alone, Raleigh still brought Gypsy Danger back to shore. When the giant Jaeger kneeled the gun, a new legend was created. However, his brother's death became an indelible ghost in his life. This forced him to give up his title as a hero and become a construction worker. But the cunning monsters still do not give up their intention to take over the earth. More and more Kaiju are pouring in from the bottom of the sea. Their huge size can easily destroy great architectural works. Even though humanity ultimately won, the losses suffered were enormous. It was later discovered that the rate of production of Jaegers could not keep up with the rate of destruction. That's why the once famous Jaeger, was dismissed by heads of state. After that, all funds were poured into the plan to build a giant coastal wall. They would rather lock themselves up than bet on generals. However, what they did not know was that this wall only lasted for an hour and then completely collapsed. Luckily, Jaeger, Striker, Eureka eventually held its ground and defeated the monster right in the heart of the city. Seeing my old teammate on TV, Raleigh suddenly felt the urge to get into the cockpit again. However, at this moment, a military plane suddenly flew to the construction site. When he saw the person who came to England clearly, he discovered that it was his old leader from 5 years ago, Striker Pentecost. It turns out that since leaving the government, General Pentecost has always been trying to gather available resources, but compared to Jaegers, giant pilots are clearly more rare.
Currently, among the Mark III pilots who are still alive, only Raleigh remains. Gypsy Danger is still waiting for its owner, but right now, Raleigh absolutely cannot accept entering another person's brain. However, he did not expect that in the face of humanity's survival, what does all of this mean?
"Where do you want to die, here or in one Jaeger?" It was this statement that made Raleigh embark on the path of self-redemption. But as soon as he got off the plane, he was questioned by a girl. Perhaps because of psychological differences, Mako Mori did not perceive Raleigh as a man with glorious victories, but she did not know that this ordinary-looking man would save her life in the future. Although the current resistance force is very poor, but General Pentecost still managed to get 4 Jaegers. Most loved by everyone, Crimson Typhoon is assembled in Changzhou. Its unique structure requires 3 pilots to control it, but its combat power is 3 times that of other Jaegers. In Hong Kong alone, it has harvested 7 monster heads. Channel Alphas, although Russia is the first-generation Jaeger, its fighting power is still extremely strong. Under the control of the 2 Kaidanovsky brothers, it achieved the outstanding achievement of destroying 6 monsters. However, the wildest Jaeger here is the 5th-generation Striker Eureka. As the only 5th-generation Jaeger in the world, as soon as it was put into operation, it continuously defeated 10 monsters. But General Pentecost, looking for Raleigh, knows simply to fight external enemies. A bolder plan is waiting for him to implement. However, the most important thing right now is still choosing a co-pilot, because Gypsy Danger needs 2 people to cooperate to operate. Even though we've been gone for 5 years, when we meet Gypsy Danger Raleigh again, I still feel extremely emotional. Even the choice of co-pilot came quickly. Even though Raleigh has been away from the battlefield for 5 years, his fighting skills have not diminished. In just a few rounds, he defeated all the candidates. I thought that my beautiful body skills could make everyone admire me, but I unexpectedly received sarcastic compliments from Mako. Turns out, Gypsy Danger's co-pilot was originally Mako. However, General Pentecost revoked her status at the last minute. Luckily, Raleigh spoke up and begged the reluctant Mako to get the chance to compete again. But what Raleigh didn't expect was that he almost knocked down by this little girl. Although on the surface it was a test of attack and defense, it was actually a test of the level of chemistry between the 2 people. In the final round, Mako overcame many difficulties and knocked Raleigh to the ground, using her own strength to win the co-pilot position. However, what was unexpected was that her immaturity almost destroyed the entire base. According to the original plan, the 2 of them stepped into the cockpit of Gypsy Danger, but the problem arises right during the neural netazon synchronization process.
The painful memories of her childhood made her sink deeply into them. Although their synchronization was perfect at first, deep memories flooded back. Mako suddenly lost control. In this moment, she seemed to fall into extremely painful memories. Monsters attacked her hometown, and her relatives disappeared, leaving only little Mako crying on the street. What's more terrifying is that this monster seems to only chase her. Even when she ran into a dead end, she could not escape the monster's harassment. In an emergency, she even more strongly expressed her will to resist from deep within her soul. But she did not know that the fear in her heart was reflected in reality, only to see Gypsy Danger also opened the gun on his arm at the same time. When the energy reaches its peak, the entire base turns into dust. In a few moments, everyone started running away. The control room wanted to cut off all connections, but unexpectedly, Marco's neural connection was so strong that external force could not be used to wake her up. The gunner was about to fire. General Pentecost immediately cut off all power connections. Thanks to that, the energy that is about to reach its peak gradually dissipates. Marco thought he would forever lose the opportunity to pilot Jaeger, but he didn't expect the monster's sudden appearance to disrupt this situation. Not only that, this attack is an extremely rare double attack. Both are level 4, codenames Otachi and Leatherback, and will arrive in Hong Kong within 1 hour. However, due to Gypsy Danger's uncertainty, General Pentecost sent him this time the remaining 3 Jaegers went to war. But what no one expected was that this monster invasion was caused by the stupid behavior of a scientist. It turns out that in the past 5 years, General Pentecost has not only repaired 4 Jaegers, but also focused on training 2 scientists. Even though they were in different fields, they had the same opinion about monster attacks. They believe that these monsters have a certain social nature and are not simply giant-sized animals. The current attacks were just the first stage, like the scouts before the general attack. Once the monsters launch their general attack, however, even though everyone has put in a lot of effort, it's still impossible to know their plans. So, the doctor and the monster decided to take the risk. He wants to apply Jaeger's neural netazon technology to the monster's brain, but it was his crazy behavior that actually revealed part of the monster's secret. It turns out that these monsters, as the doctor analyzed, are a group of ferocious alien colonists whose sole purpose of existence is occupation and destruction. And these scary monsters are mass-cloned products. However, to get more information requires a complete monster brain. Fortunately, General Pentecost has extensive connections. According to his recommendation, the doctor went to Hong Kong's biggest smuggler. This place looks like a pharmacy on the outside, but actually sells all kinds of monster organs.
From tiny insects to spinal fluid, these guys have thoroughly exploited the value of monsters. However, when the doctor clearly stated his purpose of coming here, he was almost killed by the thief. It turns out that the nerve connection is equivalent to a bridge. Although the doctor used this technology to probe the monster's plans, the monster also probed humanity's true strength. No one knew that the monster was coming in search of the doctor. At the same time, the three Jaegers, completely unaware of anything, prepared for the final battle. They were picked up by several helicopters and quickly moved towards the coast. Before monsters attack, they are the city's last line of defense. However, night vision is extremely poor. Even though monsters are wandering around, they are no different from blind people with their eyes open and unable to see anything. Crimson Typhoon was completely surprised by the sudden attack, but fortunately did not cause too much damage. After standing up, it immediately prepared for a thundercloud battle, only to see the giant saw blades on its three arms begin to rotate crazily. Each arm has an independent thruster for operation, making these electric saws extremely powerful. The monster's tough shell is easily cut. I thought that these giant Jaegers would be very heavy, but I didn't expect that weighing 1,700 tons, Crimson Typhoon can easily jump. After getting into the air, it also rotated its lower body 360 degrees, and then easily knocked the monster away. There was no time for the little monster to gasp for air. The alpha next to him joined the fight. However, just after throwing 2 punches, it was thrown out by the monster's tail. Striker Eureka attempted to move forward to assist, but was rejected by the control room. But just in time, Crimson Typhoon's head was easily pierced by the monster's tail. Seeing his comrade's sacrifice, Channel Alpha next to him made him extremely angry. However, they underestimated the power of level 4 monsters, only to see it quickly spit out a stream of blue liquid from its mouth. Channel Alpha's protective steel plate immediately corroded, forming a large hole. At the same time, although Striker Eureka came to the rescue at the fastest speed, it still could not save Channel Alpha, which was in a critical situation. Under attack from 2 monsters, Channel Alpha quickly failed. The entire Jaeger was immersed in seawater. 2 pilots also drowned in the cockpit. At the same time, Striker Eureka also encountered an unprecedented crisis. Originally, as a 5th-generation Jaeger, it could still easily defeat the little monster. But even though the energy core is electricity, it has a fatal drawback. Just as he was about to use the lethal missile on his chest, Leatherback next to him quickly launched a powerful electromagnetic pulse. The massive pulse instantly destroyed all of Striker Eureka's electrical circuits, turning it into a useless pile of rubble.
This powerful attack not only destroys the entire Jaeger but also paralyzes the entire base. Electronic waves have damaged the electrical circuits of the machine's Jaeger. Seeing that the human race had completely failed, they immediately decided to go into battle together. It turns out that although Gypsy Danger has outdated technology, it is operated by nuclear energy. Perhaps only it can turn the situation around at this critical moment. Although this was his first battle after many years of absence, Gypsy Danger showed extraordinary strength. With just a little force, it completely destroyed Leatherback's electric pulse weapon. However, the opponent took advantage of the loophole and was knocked down and thrown far away more than 20,000 meters. The entire harbor was completely destroyed. Luckily, the two of them worked well together to keep the giant Jaeger close to 2,000 tons. However, the real confrontation between the two giants has only just begun. Although they look very heavy, when moving they are extremely agile. Fortunately, Gypsy Danger is even more agile. With just one punch, it knocked him out Leatherback to the ground. This was followed by a few punches to the face. Then it even used elbow boosters. But even though he had to endure such a strong blow and impact, Leatherback, wearing fat shoes, was not harmed, but instead grabbed a large bridge and smashed it. Seeing that Leatherback does not know Gypsy's martial arts, Danger also picked up the container from the ground and then mercilessly beat it until it was stupid. However, an angry Leatherback rushed to attack Gypsy Danger again, but he didn't expect that this time Gypsy Danger readied his ultimate weapon, activating the plasma cannon. After suffering 200 energy cannon shots, its thick arm finally could not withstand such a powerful attack. Finally, it stopped breathing and collapsed on the beach, Hong Kong. However, even though Gypsy Danger won, Raleigh, who had suffered a disadvantage, still did not feel secure, so he turned around and continued to fight the supervisory board. But the battle is not over yet. There's still an Otachi monster to deal with. At this time, it snuck into the city just to look for the doctor hiding in the bunker. It was thought that this bunker buried deep underground could withstand the attack. What a disaster. One would expect this to be a self-service restaurant. Otachi didn't waste any effort and dug into the ground. Everyone was immediately exposed to the scythe of death. However, as soon as Otachi stuck out his tongue and was about to drag the doctor away, when Gypsy Danger appeared just in time, I only saw it holding a 2,000-meter-long sword and boldly approaching Otachi. Thanks to the great sword, Otachi was immediately beaten to the point of bleeding. However, soon its large tail took effect. It snatched the great sword and threw it 20 meters away. This was followed by a powerful tail swipe. Gypsy Danger fell to the ground.
However, Otachi's strength does not just lie in attack power. Its intelligence is also extremely formidable. Seems impossible to fight back, Gypsy Danger's strength immediately took advantage of nearby tall buildings to hide. Its huge shape was hidden so perfectly that Gypsy Danger couldn't find it even after searching through several neighborhoods. Until Otachi proactively attacked, the surrounding buildings were immediately collapsed into chalk dust by two giants. Luckily, Gypsy Danger is sturdy enough to withstand tons of damage. However, Otachi immediately performed a more deadly magical attack. Fortunately, Gypsy Danger easily dodged, but the buildings behind were completely corroded in the eye. Seeing this attack as too dangerous, Gypsy Danger immediately reached out and grabbed its tongue. But who would have thought that as soon as he tried to pull, he would encounter a new problem? The giant tail almost crushed the whole thing. Fortunately, Mako promptly turned on the air conditioning system to solve this annoying tail. However, it was very difficult to pull Otachi's tongue out, but it made him completely angry. I only saw it first use its sharp claws to cling tightly to Gypsy Danger, and then suddenly spread its 200-meter-long wings. It turns out that each level 4 monster has its own unique abilities. Just in the eyes of Gypsy Danger, it brought it to a height of tens of thousands of meters. Even the steering wheel began to emit a warning about lack of oxygen. Raleigh thought that this time he was truly doomed, but who would have thought that over the years, Gypsy Danger has also been improved a lot. After a series of operations, Mako, Gypsy's left hand, Danger suddenly stretched out an extremely sharp soft sword. However, even though he cut Otachi in half, he still couldn't stop Gypsy Danger rush to the ground. At this time, its huge body was like a meteorite surrounded by firelight, created by friction with the atmosphere. In times of danger, they can only open at full capacity and use all the fuel to push back. Then they quickly hugged each other tightly and tried to use the sturdy Jaeger to force a landing. Fortunately, the cloud of dust and smoke rising was large enough, so Gypsy Danger did not suffer too much damage. Everyone was happy for this hard-fought victory. However, they did not stop to rest and instead gathered their forces to launch an attack on the monster army. It turns out that the remaining 2 Jaegers will be sent to the portal at the bottom of the sea, then use nuclear bombs to destroy it. Because of this plan, General Pentecost did not even hesitate to personally pilot the striker Eureka. But they did not expect that this seemingly perfect plan would have a huge flaw. Fortunately, this flaw was discovered by a foolish doctor, preventing a new tragedy from occurring. It turns out that as soon as Otachi is defeated, the smugglers team immediately gets busy. They quickly find the monster's killer, trying to get an undead brain for the doctor.
But when they put on large protective suits and crawled into the monster's body, they discovered that the brain had been beaten to pieces. However, just when everyone thought there was no hope left, the unexpected happened. Everyone clearly heard a rhythmic sound. It was pregnant. Before everyone could recover, a terrible scream rang out over the intercom. Right then, a small monster suddenly emerged from his stomach. Even though it was only a 6-month-old baby at this time, that didn't stop it from eating anything it saw. The doctor thought this time his life was really over. But who would have thought that the little monster would suddenly stop breathing at a crucial moment? It turned out that this monster was still too young. Its organs were completely undeveloped. Plus, the umbilical cord was wrapped around its neck, and being chained to death was only a matter of sooner or later. But the arrogant highwayman unwisely stuck the dagger into its nose. As a result, a tragedy immediately occurred. If there's nothing wrong, don't mess with a child. But fortunately, the doctor had a fresh brain, only to see him hastily insert a long syringe 1 meter into the monster's head, then quickly adjust the program. But right when everything was ready and just waiting for the right opportunity, the mathematician next to him proactively proposed to cooperate. Neural synchronization, which requires 2 people to shoulder the burden. Perhaps 2 brains can collect more information. Therefore, the 2 people first achieved cooperation wearing the neural Nenzon synchronization device, and it was through the efforts of the 2 of them that they learned the true way to destroy the wormhole under the sea. However, General Pentecost and the others remained unaware of what had come near the wormhole. Giant helicopters can only take them to near-shore waters, but both Jaegers can close the valves on their bodies, turning them into true submarines. However, the monster army seemed to sense the danger and soon placed 2 level 4 monsters here. Although Becket caught the monster's signal, the swimming monsters could not be seen with the naked eye. Seeing that the 2 Jaegers had reached the deep hole at the bottom of the sea, the doctor finally returned to the control room. It turns out this wormhole has a self-identification system. Conventional bombing would be useless. Jaeger must have an identification code to get through the wormhole. Only then can we safely cross the wormhole to the other side. And this identification code is the genetic sequence on the monster's body. But just as everyone was changing their plans of action, more troublesome things continued to happen. The 3rd monster stat is 3 events. Oh my god, was I right? Just saw a level 5 monster slowly coming out of the wormhole. The 200-meter-tall Jaegers in front of it were like children. Gypsy Danger intended to move forward to support, but was soon pulled into the fight by Schooner.
It has an appearance similar to a bull, even in the water, and has extraordinary strength. Although Gypsy Danger gained many advantages in the following battle, just when it was about to use the sword hidden in its sleeve to end the match, something unexpected happened. The hidden Raiju bit off one of its arms. At the same time, Schooner also stood up and attacked again. Luckily, Gypsy Danger has a sword hidden in his sleeve. It pierced the schooner's head while also pulling it into the crater. Even hundreds of miles away, I could still smell the barbecue downstairs. It was very difficult to repel 2 attacks, but this time, Gypsy Danger also became tattered. What's more, the Raiju next to him rushed forward at extremely fast speed. But no one expected that Gypsy Danger unleashed a terrible power that cut the oncoming Raiju in half. Although Gypsy Danger on this side won the initial victory, Striker Eureka on the other side was not so lucky. Facing a level 5 monster alone seems a bit tiring. Even though Slatin had many injuries caused by Striker Eureka, it still had. That doesn't affect its fighting ability at all. It was very difficult to seize the opportunity to attack Slatin, but who would have known that it immediately called for reinforcements? Seeing that the 2-on-1 situation had absolutely no chance of winning, Striker Eureka was also mentally prepared to use his body to open the way forward. Only seen when the 2 monsters got close enough, Striker Eureka without hesitation activated the nuclear weapon behind her, and in her eyes, a huge halo of light flared up. The powerful shockwave even blew away all the surrounding seawater. Luckily, Gypsy Danger is sturdy enough to withstand the strong impact of seawater. At this time, Gypsy Danger was almost completely broken. His right arm and leg were both destroyed. But right now, it still has to complete the task of destroying the wormhole. But unexpectedly, Slatin experienced the explosion nearby and remained unharmed. Fighting it now will definitely have no chance of winning. Fortunately, Raleigh was quick to open the rear thrusters at the critical moment. Taking advantage of his own weight, he pulled Slatin fell into the deep hole. Even though Slatin had to endure many tail attacks during this time, he refused to sit still. Just saw it turn on the nuclear reactor at full power. The powerful fire sent chills down Slatin's spine. Fortunately, the doctor's theory was correct. The wormhole captured the monster's DNA that actually teleported Gypsy Danger through it. They're already in. It's successful. However, the bad thing is that Mako has run out of oxygen due to the recent attack. But fortunately, the next operations only need 1 person to complete. So Raleigh, without hesitation, took her into the lifeboat. As for himself, he activated Jaeger's self-destruct mode. This nuclear-powered Jaeger is itself a giant nuclear bomb. Although these high-level monsters saw Jaeger falling, they could not have imagined that this was a bomb.
The reaction core melts. Along with the release of huge energy, the entire wormhole was also completely destroyed. Everyone cheered happily. But in the immediate future, rescuing the 2 pilots is the most important thing. Luckily, Raleigh had escaped into the emergency escape pod. At the last moment, he was lucky enough to escape the explosion. Since then, humanity has won complete victory.